Hello and welcome to our first premiere. We're not doing a live stream tonight. We're going to run a premiere and I'll show you the titles that we'll be covering. And so the idea tonight is that we will run some videos and I will be in the chat room and hopefully Rose will be there too, interacting with you. And if things work out, we may or may not have a live stream following this, but definitely there's a chance for you to keep informed as to what's going on. So the 3 videos for tonight, we're going to do the Introduction to Meditation, Session 3, Part 3 of the Relaxation Response, and this looks into how the Eastern approach to relaxation deals with this. And then the second video, which will follow immediately after, will be Session 3, Part 1 of the Internal Map of Reality. We'll be looking at a new topic, beliefs. Now, there are many variations on what the word belief means, but there's a specific use of the term when we're talking about our internal map of reality. So we'll start to go into that. So we'll have part 1 of that session. And to wrap it up, we have a little bonus video, The Keys to Your Subconscious. That's the title of that one. And what we're developing here, we're developing a rapport and a way of accessing our subconscious. In the sense, we're making keys. And so this little bonus video talks about what to do with these new keys that you're developing. So I hope you enjoyed this premiere. And as I said, I will be in the chat and hopefully so will Rose. And, you know, there could maybe a bonus live stream at the end of it. So I hope you enjoy it and see you in the chat. Hello and welcome to Introduction to Meditation, Session 3, Part 3 of 4. And we're continuing on with the relaxation response. We're going to be looking at we're going to be looking at it from a more Eastern approach. And we looked at it in the previous session, how it was originally, starting in the 30s, viewed as a decrease in stress. So how do you control stress, reduce stress? So they're mainly a pharmaceutical approach to block the hypothalamus and to regulate the stress response. Then later in the 70s, Dr. Benson discovered the relaxation response, and that was in conjunction with the spread of meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, and things like that. But let's begin to go more deeply into an Eastern approach. So in an Eastern approach, there's a concept of one energy, and that one energy being balanced or driven by actually 2 forces. So this one energy can express itself in a yin or a yang. Here on the graph, you can see the blue being yin is considered to be more the feminine or receiving, receptive, the absorbing, the softer energy. So when you talk about something being yin, you generally think of something being soft, absorbing, receiving. The yang energy, and depicted here in red, is viewed as the energy that reaches out. It's the transmission of force, the sending of energy. And it's usually characterized by being hot or hard, forceful, firm. Yin, soft, receiving, warm, and yang being hot as opposed to warm. I think of the blue yin, it can actually be cool. Think of a body temperature, but slightly cool. When your hands get that cold feeling, that cool feeling, or cool wind blowing over your face on a hot day. So when these two energies, which are actually one, but they have two expressions, when it's balanced, the yin and yang are in a balanced force. And it just comes to mind here, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are equal in quantity. For whatever you're doing, there's an amount of yin that's appropriate, and there's an amount of yang that's appropriate. And remember back to the Bruce Lee slide where he was breaking a brick. There's an amount of yang required to break those bricks, but there's also a certain amount of yin to prevent the hand from being damaged and to allow it to pierce through the bricks. So yin and yang balance is not necessarily numeric equality. It's the appropriate amount for what's ever necessary to do. They need to be in balance to achieve whatever outcome. So in Eastern medicine, normally referred to acupuncture, there's two conditions that are treated. One is if you are in excess, and the other is if you are in deficiency. So an acupuncturist will be measuring your energy to determine whether there's an excess of energy, in which case they turn it down, or whether there is a deficiency. But I want you to notice here on this graph that for both conditions, there's two situations. So let's look at the excess. In the excess situation, it could be that your proportion of yin and yang are out of balance, where you have too much yang, your excess yang. Or you could have excess yin. Two different conditions. Same thing on the deficiency. You could have a deficiency in yin. So your yin energy is low. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that deficient yin looks a lot like excess yang. And this is a typical mistake that people who are new to Eastern medicine make the mistake where they confuse being in excess yang with actually deficient yin. They, in fact, look the same. In deficiency, you could have deficient yang energy, so you need to increase your yang energy, but be aware that that looks like excess yin. See, the shape of the graphs look the same. So one of the skills of a great herbologist or acupuncturist is that they can recognize what things need to be turned down. And I'll go back to the use of drugs in the Western approach, the use of Valium. If you give Valium to someone who is in excess yang, it will probably work pretty well. So it will decrease their yang energy, their stress response. But if you give Valium to someone who is actually deficient in yin and you decrease their yang, you can get a situation where you actually decrease both the yin and yang. So for that person, it will not work the same, and they will actually feel a lot worse. There's a lot of drugs that work like that, and I've seen some case studies of how a drug given to one person acts quite differently than another. And part of the reason is deficiencies versus excess. Again, just to wrap this up, with Valium, you're decreasing the yang energy, and that would work in that upper left-hand quadrant where your yang is increased. There are a lot of things like that. So let's just go a little bit further. When you're using foods to balance yin and yang, there are certain foods that are considered yin and they have a cooling effect, and certain foods that are warming and have a more yang. So if you were identified as being in excess yang, that imbalance, you would just normally eat some foods that would reduce your yang. Similarly, if your situation where is you low energy, you might eat something that would charge your yang energy. Now there are not just foods, but there's actual herbs that can be taken. There's another way that you can work with balancing your energy, and there's something called acupressure points or acupuncture points. So here's an example of dealing with a mal de tête, a headache. And it says here in 30 seconds, using this technique, you can reduce the effects of a headache. And this is by pressing on a point. So let's just look a little example of that. It's called a Higu point, large intestine, the fourth point. And if you look at your hand where your thumb and forefinger are, there's a point right in the center there that you can press on. I think I may have another example of that. Here is the chart showing the energy flowing along the hand, along the wrist, and going up to the elbow, then up the arm, across the collarbone, up the neck, and then to the upper lip on the opposite side, and just under the nostril. So we're pressing L2, Li2, okay? And you can do two things. You can, when you find this point, you'll know because you'll react to it. You'll get you can sort of fish around by pressing quite firmly in and around that metacarpal point up here. You push your thumb in there, push your thumb, and you'll feel a little, it won't be painful, but it will be noticeable. So you hold your thumb on that, and what I like to do is to rotate in a circle very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4 in a circle, and then reverse it the other direction. 1, 2, 3, still pressing firmly. 4. Then you go to the other hand, find that point. You'll notice it when you find it. Push your thumb in there. And the example they use here, they're pushing in with the thumb, and they find that, there it is. And I like to go in a circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, then reverse it. And what you're doing is you're balancing that energy, stimulating that energy. It's called a meridian. Right, the large intestine meridian. And this is good for a whole variety of pain. It's a general pain balancer. Now, the key with using these is that you need to do it for a longer period. Remember, the parasympathetic response system is further away from the organs they control. So when you're trying to relax something, it takes longer than when you're trying to stimulate the stress response. right? So people trigger into the stress response almost immediately. But to get the relaxation response, it takes longer. So you may have to repeat the L2 Higyu massage. You have to repeat it several times to get an effect. And as it turns out, I've noticed, and I mentioned this before, that when you do this technique, that it becomes more effective the more you do it. Okay, so that's the end of part 3. And we will continue on with part 4 in our next session. And we'll be looking deeper into the detachment aspect of meditation. Hello and welcome to Session 3, Part 1 of Internal Map of Reality, and we're going to be looking at beliefs. We've been spending a lot of time on the modes of thinking, which is important, but now we're going to shift and we're going to look at something that's more of an application, something that's more prevalent and more of a building block of your internal map. Okay, I'll go over to my laptop. And we are dealing with something that's very powerful. It's common, it's ubiquitous. And I often believe that people have many, 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 many beliefs. And maybe beliefs that they act on that they don't even really realize they have. But Napoleon Hill had something to say about the power of thought and the power of beliefs. And his strong belief was that when your desires are strong enough, you will appear to possess superhuman powers to achieve it. Okay, so up until now, as I mentioned earlier, we've been talking about in session 1 what is MAP and why we have it. And then in session 2, we spent quite a bit of time working on modes of thinking, and we did some exercises. Modes of thinking, very important, because without understanding modes and being able to apply it, the rest of this may appear to be purely academic. So we're getting into it now. So we're going to charge into beliefs. And as normal, as we go forward with this session material, you have the live streams, which you're hopefully watching now or at some later date. And there are meditation presentation recordings. And there's a YouTube playlist that I can make available to you. And those of you on Facebook can go to NSTCMA, the Nova Scotia Tai Chi and Meditation Association page, and there'd be all the links will be in there for the shows. And of course, if you're a patron and supporting us and helping us move forward with this project, you will have all the information, whether you're coming in as a $5 a month sort of introductory offer, or you're one of the $10 a month core group people, or you're the $20 a month person who really wants not only to understand this, but to apply it. You're all helping us. And one of the ways that these funds help is that Rose and I are upgrading our studio facilities. And hopefully in the long run, if we can build this group up long enough with your support, we'll be able to offer more and more services and hopefully live events. Okay, if you want to reach me, you can reach Steve at sdo2015protonmail.com or Rose at contact Rose777 at protonmail.com. Now, Rose is really busy. So if it's course material, send it to me. And I'd be really interested in knowing your previous meditation experiences, or if you have had none. But, whether you've done yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, or if you have any specific goals with this particular course, I'd really like to have that. Plus any of your information that you think is important, your questions or comments, And yes, all your information will be protected and treated confidential. Okay, so in our internal map reality, when we're talking about beliefs, we're going to be running through this agenda. We're going to be looking at what beliefs, what are they? We're going to be looking at power beliefs, how they can be used in a powerful way. We'll look at where all these beliefs come from, whether they're external or internally sourced. And then we'll look at our general beliefs about the world. And we'll look at it as a system. It's a hierarchy of beliefs and how they work. Some terms that we'll be working with. We should be familiar with placebo effect, dissonance, and as mentioned in the previous session, resourcefulness. We want to look at resourceful beliefs. In the previous session, we looked at resourceful frames, but now we're going to look at beliefs that we have that are resourceful or unresourceful. So what is a belief? So perhaps your first brush of belief would be faith, a truth, something that you believe in, whether it's a religion or a particular trust in someone or some group. But a lot of our first impressions of beliefs is that you believe in something, like a God or a creator. And this quite often is something that we've learned from our family and friends. So it's these beliefs about the outer world and trust in this truth, that this is the truth. And sometimes the outcomes are resourceful, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we avoid the outcomes. But more importantly, these are very predictable. And if these external beliefs about our outer world are often shared and are quite often a marker as, that you belong to this group of people who believe this. Many people don't want to be targeted as belonging to a group because it then automatically assumes that you believe in these things. So this is a big one, a big source of beliefs that we can commonly see. Another source of beliefs deal with healing. And here's where we get the placebo effect. The placebo effect, as has been found out, is really a real useful effect. So if you believe that you are going to be healed, your body will begin to produce all the necessary ingredients for you to heal. So I know when I first heard about the placebo effect, it was mentioned as if it was something unimportant or not being of value. But this is a very valuable effect which can be used in our day-to-day healing. Power of beliefs have also been observed in people who have achieved significant things. People have gone from rags to riches, and through their beliefs, they have achieved many things. I remember watching a video some years ago, and this person had made many fortunes, and he looked straight into the camera, the video, and said, I have lost many fortunes, and I believe I can regain all of that and more. So he had the belief that he could achieve this wealth at any time. Very powerful belief. Then there are beliefs that have tremendous influence. I think of Gandhi, who influenced the whole world and changed the politics and introduced the power of making change through non-violence, but resistance to laws and regulations that are unjust. So very powerful. So he affected the whole world. And if you talk to any of these people who are healers, who have made tremendous achievements or are influential in the world, if you ask them what they believe, they will be able to tell you in no uncertain terms exactly what they believe. They will be able to communicate to you their frames, their inner frames about their beliefs. So these internal representations are very powerful, and they are very resourceful. Now, people who have these beliefs Well, they get feedback. So if you're a healer, you see people who get healed. If you are someone making achievements in this world, you will achieve those. You'll get feedback. And if you're, of course, one of the influencers, you will see change. The one thing that's interesting about these types of beliefs, these powerful beliefs, is that people who use them frequently and can really intensify their use. So if you're watching someone who's really adept at healing people, the intensity at which they do it and the intensity at which they believe it is quite remarkable. So beliefs are associated with the intensity at which you wish them to be achieved. Now there's another side to this, that if you're with someone who has a belief that differs from yours, or if there's something in the outside world that you or they see that conflicts with their inner belief, they will experience dissonance. And there's some things that they will do, and 3 things that they will do that really stand out, is that they will immediately begin to block the outside input. So they're getting input from their outside world, they're getting feedback, but it conflicts with their belief. And so they try to block it, right? They try to filter it out. And if that doesn't work, they will completely deny that observation is real. They'll completely delete it from their reality. And you probably have seen people where you say, look, here's the proof, blah, 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 blah. And they will say, no, that's not a proof. Or they will completely not even want to talk to you. That's the classic where you're in a relationship and one person, the other person, has a belief that is really unresourceful. And you want to help them see something differently. They won't even talk to you. They'll avoid the talk. They'll block you out. And finally, if all else fail, the person experiencing the dissonance about the belief will actually hallucinate that their belief is true. They'll actually create a reality in which their belief is true. So this is a big deal. So you or someone you know or someone you love has a belief that's unresourceful and will not change and is going through dissonance, then you have to work with them very, very gently, or with yourself very, very gently, to be able to wake up. Now, this is all dealing with something called a low threshold. And I've mentioned this in the earlier sessions. Your meditation will help you increase your personal threshold, or if there's someone that you're working with, or a loved one or a family member, to raise their threshold rather than directly dealing with their dissonance and their belief. Just help them experience more meditation, and that will in itself help them open up. This is all part of the change process, and quite often in our personal reality, in our personal internal map, there are unresourceful beliefs that we refuse to change, and we block and delete and hallucinate. We have to change those. We have to open up and consider other realities. So this is an issue, and we'll again be talking about this later on. But the change process quite often for you will be dealing with your personal dissonance. Okay, so what is a belief? So I see belief in at least 3 stages. And a belief is actually the intermediate step between a core desire and an outcome. So say you have a desire about something. Say you want to be loved, as an example. Well, you will have a belief on how to be loved. So beliefs are a way to operationalize, or a way of achieving your core desire. So in the case of our genie, the genie will look at you, or your subconscious will look at you and say, what is it you desire? Oh, you desire to be loved. I think if you do this, I believe if you do this, you will be loved by others. So the belief is the action or the activity that you will do to achieve an outcome that matches your desire. Now notice that there's a loop back. So, after your belief has been working for a while, you can see from the outside world, you will get feedback whether or not that belief has an outcome that matches to your desire. So there's 3 stages. There's the core desire, then there is a belief, perhaps many beliefs, of how to achieve or reach that core desire. And then there are outcomes that you see in the outside world. You get feedback that tell you whether or not that belief works. So in terms of the internal map of reality, a belief is a mechanism that you are deploying to satisfy a core desire. And that belief, its effectiveness can be measured by outcomes in the outside world. Okay? So a core belief is matched to a core desire that produces an outcome. So in the case of the 3 wishes, the genie will give you anything. So if people made a wish for a desire, the genie might have a difficult time meeting that. It might give you all kinds of things. If your 3 wishes were about a belief, the genie will still have somewhat of a difficult time. But if your wish was for a specific outcome, the genie will say, okay, I know how to do that. So let's look at these 3 components, desires. If you have a desire, and it's a very specific desire, then that's almost an outcome. Your desire should be general. Why? Because the more general your desire, the more ways the genie can fulfill it. So if you have a very generalized desire like being appreciated, well, how many different ways could the genie do something to make you appreciated? If you think that to be appreciated, you have to give gifts to people, for example, you might say, okay, well, if I give gifts to people, and the genie could do that. The genie could give all kinds of gifts to people, and your expected outcome would be that people would start to admire and appreciate you. So it kind of goes from the general to the specific. So the general is the desire, the specific belief about how to satisfy desire. And please note here, there could be many, 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 many beliefs about how to satisfy that desire. And the outcome is specific to that belief. So we'll look at some examples here. But I just want to note that some people have these 3 things in place for a long time. Their whole life, they've had desires and beliefs how to satisfy those desires, and they've been getting the same outcomes. Here's the trick. You could be doing this for a long time, but getting the reverse desired outcome. And I've seen that quite a lot, where people have a desire, they have a belief about it, but they're getting the opposite result. So, for instance, they may really want to be appreciated and in a groups, but their belief about it will generate an outcome where they are actually disliked. I think of an example here of when I was doing a children's theater group, and I had a young fellow who really wanted to be part of the group. He really, really wanted to be appreciated and, participate as a group. But he got the opposite result. The reason is that he believed that by participating and interrupting people, so if he saw anyone starting something, he would rush in and, in effect, interrupt, and we called him Mr. Interruptus. But he believed by speaking up all the time and being like super participatory, that would make him appreciated. But in fact, that was not what we wanted. We wanted him to stop, look at what the group was doing, and participate on a level that was compatible with the other members. So sort of be more sort of gentle. It took him a long time to learn this, but he did. But this is an example where he really was getting the opposite results. This is so significant that after he made this breakthrough in our training group, the following week, the mother came up to me And I said, oh, what's going on inside? Is there a problem? You know, when a parent comes up to you before a session, you think, oh. But she was almost in tears because she said her son had changed. He no longer interrupted the members of the family. He was no longer a pain in the butt. And this was so recognizably so that the mother said, well, what did you do to him? What was it you did to make him change? And I just smiled at her and said, well, he just learned to be part of the group. So this is very important. So let's look at some. And this is your exercise 4, to look at the macro, the micro and the macro of your beliefs. So they go from the micro to the macro. So your desire is very, very general, and it will be expressed in a specific belief about matching that. And there could be many outcomes. So let's look at an example. Say being loved is a desire. So the genie might go and say, well, if you lose weight, you will perhaps more dates. People will like you and want to date you and want to hang out with you. So that's one example. So maybe you want to be loved again. So the genie would say, well, what can I do to help this person be loved? They could join a social group. So the genie will offer you all kinds of opportunities to join a social group. And as a result, you might meet people and date more often. So those are examples how you went from a very general statement, looked at many, many possibilities, how to satisfy that desire, and then looked at some acceptable outcomes. Here's the key. If you set up a desire and you agree to a belief, it's important to accept that outcome. That's the outcome you come. Now, if the outcome wasn't to your liking, that's fine. You don't reject it, you accept it, but maybe you fine-tune your belief. So the belief, so here's an example. So you want financial security. So what's one belief about financial security? You might work 2 jobs. And how would you know that working 2 jobs is a belief to satisfy financial security? How would you know? Well, you might look at your savings account, and if your savings account balance increase, hey, then you were doing pretty good. Well, that's the exercise. I will be giving more information about exercise 4, but we will continue on with session 3, part 2 in our next group. So thank you for participating. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And welcome to bonus topic number 3. These topics are just things of interest and also parts of the regular sessions that I feel needed to be underlined a bit more. And sometimes they're just fun things that I thought I would like to share. Today's topic is the keys to your subconscious. And this was recorded on the 8th of January 2022. So let's go over to the PowerPoint. The sub areas that I'll cover in this short presentation is the subconscious, and really this is all about how to get in alignment with your subconscious, your greater self, how to be in tune with yourself. Then we'll talk about your power frames. We've been talking about power frames quite a bit. They're important. And if you don't have power frames, or if your power frames are not resourceful, well, that's what will happen. You will get less resourceful outcomes. Then we'll talk about your inner desires. And yes, we need to protect our passwords. So we'll talk a little bit about password protection. So you're probably familiar with this graphic. So I like to draw at a different point about this graphic each time I show it. So if our conscious, aware, awoke mind is only 10% of our total self, of our total being, then there's a very good possibility that we're not aware of that other 90%, or our awareness of it is dim. So the purpose of this course and the meditation course is to help you expand that 10%, or at least be able to redirect it to your subconscious. And it's my personal belief that when we are attuned and in harmony with our subconscious, that we can do many, many more things. Now, here's the relevant piece to this. There are entities in the corporate world and in the governmental world and in the power elite that their sole goal is to control your 90%. So protecting that 90% from outsiders is not a major concern. I don't want you to be obsessed by it, but you need to be aware of it, that even your best friend may take advantage of knowledge about your 90%. The example I like the most is when you are a tourist in a strange area, and say you're in a resort area, and the street people are really, really, really astute at accessing your 90% to get you to buy what they're selling, right? And there's a skill to it. If you watch them and really listen to them, they're probing, they're looking at you, and they're looking at your body language, and they're figuring, what can I say to this person that will trigger them to buy something? Okay, so let's move on. So you have power frames, and your power frames may be at different stages of getting to your success, of reaching your goal. You might be at the very, very beginning where you're saying, I can't do this, I can't do it. And then through self-examination, listening to your subconscious, by taking courses like this, doing whatever you have to do, you move up a step and you say, I really do want this. And then you move up another step and you say, I really want it. How can I get it? And when you switch from I want it to how, you've made a major step. And then the steps go on and you say, well, I think I'll try it. Maybe you're not 100% sure, but you say, I'll try it. And then you say, oh, I can do it. And then the final stage where you say, I am doing it. I will do it. I am capable of doing this, and I'm doing it. And that's where I want all of you to be. Now, your power frames will depict different stages of this. And if at some point your power frame is in some way modified by an outside influence, and I talked about this before, when you're trying to make a self-improvement, say you're trying to quit smoking, or you're trying to lose weight, or whatever it might be, it will be your best friends and your closest people who might try to change your power frame and move you down a step. And why would they do that? Why would they want to move you from how do I do it down to I want to do it, or even down to, oh, I can't do that? Why would someone want you to go all the way back to, oh, I can't do what is important for my health or well-being? Why would they do that? Well, for a very selfish reason, because they may be a smoker with you. And when they see you trying to quit smoking, they are going to lose a friend in their mind. So they're not going to have that partner. And it makes them feel that, they're not doing something correct. If you improve yourself and they don't, then their only solution. So this is a tug that you will feel particularly between your closest friends. And, you'll feel it between strangers too. When you're at a higher level of success and they are at a lower level, they will try to pull you down. Now, the good news is that if you're around people who are at a higher level, say they are at, I can do it, and you're at, I want to do it, and you're talking to someone who's up a few steps, guess what they will do? They will encourage you to come up at least one step. So this is important that people, close friends, and also the world, there's lots of reasons why you shouldn't quit smoking in advertising and in movies, and subtly, right? They're there. Same thing with dieting. So your inner key, so you have this power frame, and that becomes your inner key. And the stronger your power frame, the further up those steps to success it is, the better you'll feel about yourself. And guess what? The likelihood of getting to that successful level increases for every step your power frame goes up that ladder. So why not have your power frame higher? But take your time, do whatever is comfortable for you. But here's the message. Protect that power frame. Consider it as a key to your subconscious, and only share it with those you feel will appreciate it and will try to help you to go up a step towards success. Remembering that there are lots of reasons people close to you and people in the greater world do not want you to change. I'm doing some work on dieting and food, and all of the marketing out there is directing us towards poor diet, to fast food, to ingredients that really are not good for us. Why would they do that? For their profiting. Okay, so if your close friend is trying to modify, if your close friend has access to your power frame, they will change it. If you say what your power frame is, they might say, oh, well, that's not true because I know so-and-so who didn't da-da-da-da-da. They will put dispersions or in some way try to minimize that power frame. So protect it. Don't share it with everyone. If you have a power frame and you feel it's motivating you to move on, keep it and share it with those you feel are in harmony. So when you gain the knowledge of how to move up a step, right, you gain wisdom, you gain that some inner power. But sharing it is very much a human trait. However, share it with those you feel will actually act on it and will actually embellish it or grow it. I like to think that if someone gives me some of their inner knowledge, some of their wisdom, it's a responsibility for me to grow it and in some way share it in a positive, constructive way. Well, that's the bonus thing, number 3. And we will see you in the workshops, virtual workshops. And I appreciate your time. Oh, if you have any questions and you want to add feedback to this, please feel free to contact me through my email.